how it genuinely feels to make $100,000 per month. So I've yet to reach this milestone in my life personally. It's a goal of mine. Hopefully one day I will achieve that. The most I've made in a single month has been like $7,000 when I was in sales, selling credit card processing and POS systems. So, I haven't even touched the 10K a month mark just yet, but that's the first goal. It's getting to 5 to 10K a month. And then from there, I can't even fathom $100,000 a month. But I know there's people out there that do it, whether they're an entrepreneur or whatever the case may be. So this video intrigued me. Let's dive into this video and see what he's talking about.
Here's how it genuinely feels to make $100,000 a month. So in the last few months, we've helped, quite a bit of entrepreneurs, quite a bit of business owners, and one of them specifically now scaled their business to several $100,000 a month. And I just can't tell you the sheer joy this person has with their business, the freedom that they have with their business, right? This guy came to me, he saw the virality that I had. And he's like, man, I want this for my business, bro. And I was like, we got you. Because we help people with skills, people with businesses, scale with social media. And just the sheer happiness that this guy now has. He was already successful with business, right? He was already like making good money, but it was like unpredictable. It was like, I'm not sure. It was like ups and downs, right? And that's even with a very, very good business, but it was unpredictable. And now we've helped this person create something that is literally infinitely scalable because they now have the control, right? And it feels amazing, man. As a man, I really believe that your life starts at 100K a month. Now,
Wow.
This is going to go over your
It's kind of crazy. 100 bands a month is where your life starts as a man. That's a bold statement. I wonder how he's going to substantiate this. Let's see.
head and you think that this is too much money, skip the video. And what I mean by this is, especially, so the thing that people don't understand is, and I tell this to all our students, 100K a month is where life starts simply because you still have to pay taxes. So I can say 300K a month and be 100K net, but then that'll be like, oh my God, let's start off with 100K a month. Let's break it down a little bit. Let me help you guys out. Why? So this is where life starts. You've heard 10K a month, 20K a month, 30K a month. I've literally had guys come on live streams with me and it's like, yo, 10K a month, man, I can't even breathe because I'm doing all the work. When you're stuck around 10K a month, 15K a month, 20K a month, you're usually the onlypreneur, meaning you're a solopreneur. It's only you. You're doing the marketing, you're doing this.
Okay. I think I know what direction this is heading where, you know, if you're making 10, 20, 30,000 a month, you're probably doing it on your own. You're probably an influencer of some sort. You have a business, but the day-to-day task, the day-to-day, you know, things that need to get done, it's primarily on you. It's on your back. It's on your shoulder. Lord have mercy. It's on your it's on your back. It's on your shoulders, which would make sense that the more that you scale as far as financially, you know, you go from 20K a month maybe to 50K a month, 100K a month, 300,000 a month. It's probably due to you delegating, you understand, and having other people in place to take care of certain tasks. That way, you know, they're taking care of the more day-to-day mundane tasks that need to get done, but aren't essential to growing the business exponentially. While you, if you're the head of this, if you're the CEO, if you're the, you know, you're the person thinking of all the strategic marketing, etc., you're probably utilizing that time that you've now, you know, you've given these tasks to someone else to get that time for yourself, and you're using that time now to learn how to continue to expand. So from that aspect, I can understand what he's saying, and I'm not seeing nothing wrong with what he's saying so far. Let's see what else he got to say.
The sales, you're doing everything. You're doing whatever it takes to make that kind of money. And unfortunately, you're never going to go from 10 to 30 to 50 to 100 by yourself. So as you bring on more people to help you get more money, you have to split some of the revenue. You have to split some of the profits. This is just any business, right? No business is like, there's no billion-dollar company that's one person. Very rarely are you going to get to 7 figures by yourself. So as you bring on more people on your team, you have to split the profit. So let me make this clear, guys. When I say 100K a month, so the amount of money you have to make that net is a lot, right? But here's why this is where your life starts. Because at 100K a month net, right, you now have something called personal taxes. I've told you guys about this shit, you know, in the past about how like I got fucked with taxes, believe in like 2022. I wasn't putting away for taxes. And it was probably the biggest life lesson of my life. I got hit with a 6-figure tax bill and I was I was okay with 20 grand a month, 15 grand a month, 30 grand a month, but I wasn't putting away taxes. I thought all the money was for me.
Oh no, let that be a learning lesson to anybody out there, okay? When you start making money, if the taxes are not automatically deducted, because maybe you're employed by somebody, especially if you're an entrepreneur, if you run your own business, you have to be the one to figure out and calculate how much of your earnings will be designated towards taxes. You know what I mean? You don't want to be one of them dudes who don't pay your taxes, because if there's one thing the IRS don't play about, it's you not paying them their fair share. All right? So you don't want to get Wesley sniped out here, okay? Pay your taxes. You know what I mean? If you don't know how to take care of your taxes, pay a professional to assist you, but make sure that gets taken care of, okay?
$1 you make, you have to give Uncle Sam 30%. Look at Anthony Joshua. Anthony Joshua just knocked out a Jake Paul, right? And it's all over the internet how he has to give like 40 million of that shit. So he put his life on the line, suffered, did all this shit. He got 100 M's, but he had to give 50 away, right? This does not include paying his team. This does not include all the things that came into the fight camp. That's just what he keeps. So we got to always break down these numbers, right? And one of my students, we had a call yesterday. He was like talking about it. He was like, man, why don't people understand that it's not always as big as it seems? I was like, yeah, people don't get it. They think that is this 100K a month means I'm gonna keep $100,000 in my pocket.
It doesn't mean that.
If you net 100 grand next month,
if you make $100,000 gross monthly, you're gonna be paying at the very least $30,000 in taxes every single month. Okay, so you're left with roughly, let's say, $60,000 to $70,000 after that, and that's not including expenses. Okay, any expenses to run said business that is generating $100,000 a month, that's not including that. So if you're making $100,000 a month, you pay $30,000 in taxes. Let's say you pay another $20,000 in expenses, just overshooting. That means you're left with about $40,000 to $50,000 after that. Right? Now you still have living expenses. Basically, what he's trying to say is it starts to dwindle down. You know, the more money you're making is usually because you have a team. Now you have to pay that team. Now you have to pay any software you're using. Now you have to pay. You don't keep 100% of that profit. That is not net profit into your pocket, personal profit. You understand? So I understand where he's coming from, and I don't disagree so far, man. Everything he's saying is kind of spot on. Keep it a band.
Month, right? Net, meaning after expenses, you still have to put away taxes for that month. So I've started paying my taxes every quarter. This year alone, guys, before the year ends, I spent IRS. I spent a lot of money on taxes. So it's not that much money. It's great. It's amazing. But this is where you need to be aiming for this. You should not be okay making anything under $100,000 a month. You should not be okay with it. Because here's how you get food.
This is where I will have some pushback on that, because it is very unrealistic. I understand what he's saying. I understand the intention behind it. But you have to understand that most people within the United States, most civilians, especially people who never want to own a business, never want to become an influencer, never want to create their own sources of income, who always want to stay employed by someone, a business, a government agency, whatever the case may be, most people will never generate $100,000 a month. Most people are lucky if they make $100,000 in the span of 2 years. Okay, so that rhetoric saying that your life doesn't start as a man until you make $100,000 a month, then most men will never start life with that mindset. You feel me? Most men will never start life if that's the case, because most men will never make $100,000 a month. That is top 1% type of income. Maybe they'll make $100,000 over 2-3 years. The average income, I believe, is about $42,000. Okay, so for you to make $100,000 is going to take you about 2.5 years, and all of that isn't even net. Okay, that's gross. That's gross income. That's not net income. You still have to pay taxes on that. So let's really break it down. If you want to make $100,000 net, it's going to take you, with an average income of $42,000 a year, it's going to take you about 3, 4, 5 years to net $100,000. So this rhetoric, I just find it to be very disingenuous to an extent. I understand you're trying to motivate people, have them go out there and strive to achieve that level of income. But understand, for most people, it would be unrealistic, and it's only going to be the most persistent, consistent, dedicated, intelligent, driven people who are able to achieve even a glimmer of that financial, you know what I mean? Like, most people will not achieve that. It's very unrealistic for most people. I think getting to 10K a month is much more realistic than trying to get people to get to $100,000 a month. That's all I'm saying. Is it unachievable? No. But is it highly, highly, incredibly difficult to do so for the majority of United States citizens? Yeah, super fucking difficult.
Food and scammed, right? You let these people tell you, oh no, be comfortable where you are. Let's say you have a job. You know that you guys get done worse. If you have a job if you have W-2 income, they take your money before. If you have a paycheck, you're thinking $100,000 a month is not that much. Oh, that's life-changing money. Did you look at your bank account lately? Think about you. If you have a paycheck, your last paycheck, they took the majority of your money before you got it. So all your work was gone. Everything you put in, they took their part regardless. Now think about it. If you made 100, it will be the same shit. But at least with a business, at least with your own brand,
you can write off a lot of that. I know that's where he's going to, but it is correct. Robert Kiyosaki, if you ever read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, there's a sequel to that book called Cashflow Quadrants, where he breaks things down into 4 quadrants. I believe I have the book. I don't know where I do. Hold on. Okay. Right here, Robert Kiyosaki, Cashflow Quadrant, right? I read this book twice. I might even read it again. But what he does is he essentially breaks it down into 4 quadrants. You have E, which is for employee. You have B, which is for business. I don't know if you guys can see this, right? You have E for employee. You have B for business. You have I for, I guess, independent contractor of sorts. And you have S for self-employed. No, I'm sorry. I is for investor. I is for people who invest in like the stock market, things of that nature, cryptocurrency, things of that nature. So he is correct. He's not saying anything false. If you are a employee, you will be taxed at the highest rate. Okay, it is what it is. It's just what it is. If you run a business, you can find different ways to mitigate those taxes. Grant Cardone speaks about this all the time. He'll go and buy a plane so that he doesn't have to pay the entire amount he would be due in taxes. He can write that off with something that would be seen as a business expense. So there is legitimacy to what he's saying here, is all I'm trying to get to. Okay, let's keep it going.
You get to allocate a lot of that money back into the business. So what the smart business owners do is they make the 100 grand a month and they try to put 50 back into the business because that 50 is not taxable. If I net 100 and I put 50 right back into it to make more money, I don't got to pay taxes on that. So I can then, my net can now be 50, not 100. What the really smart business owners do is they say, I made 100 this month. I'm going to live off of 10. I'm going to put 90 back into the business so it can give me more money. I don't have to pay taxes on that. So the whole game, guys, and that's why I want to encourage you guys to be aiming for much, much more, is you want to get your business to the point where your investable assets are paying you literally financial freedom. You want to have investable assets that are giving you enough income to live and be able to do whatever you want. And unfortunately, you cannot do that if you're not making a lot of money. Because even when you make a lot of money, guys, you have to put that shit back into the business. Yeah. So if you... Like, you guys understand what I'm saying? Please just think with me here. Get rid of your limiting beliefs and just follow. Please, for the love of me, please just listen to what I'm telling you. I have unbelievable love and care for you guys. I'm telling you guys, you're thinking too fucking small. You're thinking too small because you think that, let me explain to you, 100 grand a month, if that was directly in your pocket, meant that you made 500. So you guys look at 100K. Let me just shrink that number for you. If somebody says, oh, I make 100 grand a month, and they actually put $100,000 into their pocket, that means they made around 400 to 500 because there's no business model on planet Earth that is 100% profit margins. The e-com gurus that flex their big numbers.
Shit, most businesses are happy with a 20-30% profit margin. That's exceptionally well for most businesses. You know, like, don't get that shit twisted, bro. Most businesses do not have a large profit margin. Expenses and taxes are a large, you know, it's going to take a lot of that money. All right. That's why most businesses try to minimize expenses as much as possible so that their bottom dollar, their true profit margin can be squeezed as much as possible, essentially, you know? So yeah, I agree with what he's saying. He ain't saying nothing wrong. I still feel like trying to tell most men to reach for $100,000 a month is unachievable. I believe getting to $100,000 a year is much more achievable, incredibly much more achievable than $100,000 a month. So I still feel that it is a bit disingenuous to teach men to try and reach towards $100,000 a month. Now, granted, if you shoot for the moon, you might land on the stars. So I still, you know, believe that there's good in what he's saying, but be realistic.
They're keeping 5% profit. They're telling you, we made $1 million a month. We made this much a month. They ain't keeping nowhere close to that shit. These motherfuckers are flexing. They're flexing gross, not profit. If somebody put 100 grand in their pocket, they made at least 300 to 400 business expenses, taxes, paying out your team. And if they're a really smart business owner, they reinvested most of their money back into the business. So I just want to tell you guys that you gotta stop. You gotta be sick to your stomach. This is something else I want to talk about. People talk about Elon. Elon is worth $1 trillion. Elon is worth $1 trillion. Why can't Elon give me 100 million? Elon's wealth is tied into his shares. So
that's another misconception. He's going to break this down, but what people fail to realize is that is just your net worth and assets. These billionaires, these trillionaires, they have these high numbers in assets. They have certain shares within a company, especially if they started the company and built it from the ground up, like Jeff Bezos with Amazon, like Elon Musk with Tesla and SpaceX, etc. These men, their net worth is tied to the value of their businesses, of their corporations. But if you think that they really have trillions of dollars in liquid in their personal name, you're bugging. You're crazy. If they do have large sums of liquid cash, disposable liquid cash set to the side, it's within their corporation. It's within the guidelines of their business, whether it's in C Corp, S Corp, etc., whatever legal entity you have, it's within those parameters. But if you think that these men have trillions and billions of dollars in cash liquid in their personal name, in their personal accounts, you're bugging. You're crazy. All right. I'm just saying that's not the reality of things. OK, and most of their net worth is tied to, again, the shares within the company that they own or manage or run or build, etc. That's what it's tied to, not liquid cash. All right. Just trying to differentiate so people aren't confused. All right. Let's keep it pushing.
Let me explain how the rich work, guys. And this is why I think every single one of you guys, you need to have unbelievable sense of urgency. Unbelievable sense of urgency, bro, to try to get some money. Because a trillionaire like Elon, he's not $1 trillion liquid. It's in investable assets. It's in shares of his company. Exactly. Go look up his wealth. It's in Twitter. It's in Tesla. It's in SpaceX. If he was to withdraw that money, the shares of the company will go down. And then he will be worth nothing. So a billionaire, guys, let me teach you guys some finances. A billionaire may have 100 or 2 liquid, maybe. Or they may have like 50 liquid and maybe 100 or 200 in investable assets. And if they withdraw the money from the assets, it loses value. That's why you see these people, you're like, why would they keep working? They got all the money in the world. No, they don't. They don't. You think, oh, he's a billionaire.
That is a very wrong misconception when it comes to the ultra rich and elite. You understand? Cash, liquid cash is not the same as like so for example, there's a statistic, I'll put it up on the screen, but there's a statistic that there's, I think on average, every year there's 1,000 new millionaires created in the United States, something along the lines of that. You have to understand that's in assets. That might have been a man buying a home in the early 2000s or late 1990s, and he probably bought the home for, I don't know, $200,000, $300,000, let's say, depending on what state you bought the home in. And over the course of the next 10, 20 years up until now, that house has risen in value and is now worth, let's say $800,000, $1 million. And then maybe they also have a business that's generating decent income. It's a multitude of things that make them a millionaire. But thinking that they have $1 million in net liquid cash in their bank reserve is false. Okay, all these new millionaires being made is usually tied to the assets that they've bought, that they've created over time. Most people do not have that type of liquid cash on reserve on hand. That's just the reality of things. Okay, that's just keeping it a band. Most people become millionaires because now they bought a home and now their home is worth $1 million from 100,000 or something of the sort. I'm just saying, take it with a grain of salt. These numbers, I'm just throwing them out randomly, but you get the context of what I'm trying to, get out there. But yeah, he's right.
Must have $1 billion in his pocket. No, he does not. He has the majority of his wealth in shareholder value of stocks. He has the majority of his wealth in investable assets that he cannot just withdraw. He has to hope that his investable assets yield a return that pays him a percentage, and then he can't even take that percentage because he's gonna get taxed on it. Man, we need to have financial literacy as the only course in university, because people don't even know this is a thing. Guys, even if I had 100 M's in investable assets, let's say I had 100 M's in real estate. If that 100 million I have in real estate, let's say my cash flow was $1 million a year, I would still pay capital gains tax on my returns.
That's a real thing. I know a lot of guys who invest in the stock market, whether it's actual dividends portfolios, or maybe they do options trading, whatever the case is. Yo, capital gains tax is a real thing, okay? People be thinking, oh, he's up now. He just made all the bro. You got to pay taxes. You got to pay capital gains taxes. If you own property, every year you're paying property taxes. Yo, bro, Uncle Sam is a bitch. Okay, they gonna get they bread one way or another. They gonna tax the fuck out of you. Okay, even a state like Texas and Florida, who don't have state taxes, they only have federal taxes that you have to pay. The way they offset that is by having a higher rate of property taxes and other way, you know what I mean? They always offset it in one way or another. Okay, so just understand, Uncle Sam is gonna take your bread every time. All right, they're gonna do what they're gonna do. You got to be smart, which is why I understand the Grant Cardones of the world. I understand these entrepreneurs who offset their tax liability by investing in things that will, you understand, where they don't have to pay all this money to Uncle Sam. They can buy a car, a plane, this, whatever, which will be a business asset that will help them offset the amount of taxes they have to pay.
Withdrew them. That's how crazy the fucking IRS is. That's how crazy like, I'm telling you guys from the bottom of my heart. If I had 100 mil paying me a dividend of $1 million a year, just 1%. Let's say I got 100 mil and I got 1% of that shit back, and I got $1 million a year from my investable assets. I have to pay capital gains. Let's say I didn't touch the money for 2 years. I get long-term capital gains. Short-term capital gains is if you have the money in investable assets and you start taking dividends from it, or you start capitalizing the returns, you start yielding the returns before 2 years, you pay 25% on the returns. So what the rich do is they go park their money in investable assets, and what they do is they borrow against the money.
Yep.
So Elon, I don't want to get into a financial lesson, but I really try to emphasize why you guys need to make more money, man, because you guys don't understand this shit. So Elon, let's say his shares in Tesla are worth $1 trillion. He can't go and withdraw $1 trillion from Tesla because the stock value will crash, and then Tesla will go to shit, and then he has no money. So Elon now has to go to the bank and say, hey, here's 100 million of my shares in collateral. Give me a loan against these shares, right? And I'm gonna pay interest on it. He borrows against his stocks, right? Now he has borrowed money against his stocks. That's the only time he can now not pay money on the tax. Because if he took his shares and withdrew them, he would pay capital gains tax. He will tank his fucking business. Yep. So he has to go have enough value as collateral to get the money, right? So he doesn't pay taxes on it. So do you see why the rich need to keep getting richer? Because yeah, you can have billions of dollars, but you don't have billion. If you have billions liquid, you worth a fuck ton of billions.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot of money. So please, guys, start minimizing these numbers. 100 grand a month is not that much money because you're not keeping most of that shit. And most of the people who make 100 grand a month, they put most of the money back into the business. The only time you can have, let's say, a family office, what a family office is like literally a team that invests your assets for you. Basically, like they manage your wealth for you. You can't even get into the family office category without like 50 to 100 mil in investable assets. So until you have like 50 to 100 mil in investable assets to then really have a real good family office, you're getting fucked by taxes. You're getting fucked. You're getting bent over. The low 7-figure mark to the mid 8-figure mark, you're getting bent over. You're getting bent over. Got to pay taxes quarterly. You got to try to reinvest most of the money so your business keeps growing. If you take that shit as profit, you're getting taxed on it and you're not growing the business. So what most entrepreneurs do, guys, is they go say, okay, I made 100 this month. Shit. How can I fucking put 80 back, 90 back into the business so I don't pay taxes on this, live below my means, keep a small chunk for myself, and keep letting the business grow. When I get the enterprise value of my business to a certain level, I can then go borrow bigger amounts from the bank so I don't get taxed on it. That's the game. So people, like, guys are so obsessed with like these numbers and you think that it's so big, and it's really not. It's really not. It's really not. So you need to be striving to make more money because 100 grand a month is not really 100 grand a month. $1 million a month is not really $1 million a month because the amount of taxes you're going to pay is absurd. And for you to avoid those taxes, you might need to go move to Puerto Rico, which is its own problem. I don't want to live in Puerto Rico. I want to live in America. You might have to go to move to Puerto Rico.
But then again, Puerto Rico is a part of America, but he is correct. You can move to different places, different states where you are taxed differently. And if it is beneficial for you and your business, it is a good tactic to use, in order to minimize the necessary expenses that you have to pay, whether it's in taxes or business expenses. If that's why a lot of businesses, they always find ways around, putting this here, moving here, the corporation is set up in this state. There's different loopholes that a lot of people utilize, especially the ultra rich, to minimize their tax expense, their tax bill.
Switch up your business, do all type of shit, and that's a headache on its own. So if you want to live in America like me and you want to make a lot of money, you need to realize that 100K a month is not that much money. It's great money, but the real smart business owners, they're not flexing cars on Instagram. They're not flexing trips. They're trying to put that shit right back into the business so they don't get fucked by taxes. They don't get bent over. I've paid over 6 figures in taxes this year, well over $100,000. And I'm sitting up there telling you guys, you need to try to get your income up as high as possible to the point where you can get a family office, to the point where you can borrow against some of this money. I can't even borrow against anything. I'm too broke. You don't got 50 to 100 million in investable assets. What collateral are you going to give to the bank? You're a joke. You don't have a family office. So from the 7-figure mark to the mid 8-figure mark, you got to try to dump that money back into the business so you can keep it generating higher. So then when it gets to a certain enterprise value, when it gets to a certain asset value, you can go borrow against it. And then you can have the toys. At that point, it needs to be investable assets that yield you a return that you can borrow against, that you can then also pay the interest off on. This money game is crazy when you think about it. So
and my channel is very Black oriented. And one thing about the Black community is that we're not taught financial literacy just as a staple within our community, right? We have to go and learn this ourselves. I had to go and buy books like Cashflow Quadrant. I had to go and learn these things because I love my mom. I love my mom. I would die for that woman. But financial illiteracy is a real thing in not only my family bloodline, but a lot of people who look like me. Okay, so I appreciate this dude for keeping it 100% real. These are the things that we need to be teaching our children. Actual financial literacy. You understand the difference between being a business owner and being an employee, and the pros and cons to either side of the fence. You know, these are real life conversations that we need to be having, and you know, especially in the Black community, especially if we want to ever close the wealth gap in this country, we have to start understanding financial literacy to a great extent. Okay, so yeah, I agree with this. What Fit is saying, I agree 100%. I don't think he said anything wrong, except that every man should try to make $100,000 a month is very unrealistic. I say try your best to get to about 10, 20, 30,000 a month. I think that's more achievable than $100,000 a month. I'm just saying. Some people will achieve it. Some people will have that drive and that, you know what I mean, whatever it takes to get there. But a large percentage of people will never achieve that, okay? But that doesn't mean you can't make 5K a month. That doesn't mean you can't make 10, 15K a month. So you should still strive to achieve a higher level of financial success and not just, you know, be content with right above poverty.
If you're not making at least 100K a month, buddy, you think you made it at 30 grand a month, 20 grand. No, you didn't. You can't do shit. You can't travel where you want to travel. You can't go where you want to go. 100K a month is where you start to have some breathing room. Okay, I have something that's making me a lot of money. I can live off a small amount. I can reinvest the majority, try to grow this engine that I have that is making me this money more and more and more, get me closer and closer to financial freedom. Or else, you're barely making ends meet. You know, you have enough to provide for yourself, but you don't have that much. You can't take care of your family. You can't take care of your moms. You can't take care of your pops. You can't fly where you want to fly, go where you want to go. So you should be striving to turn either your skill or your business into something profitable. And that's what we help people with. We take people who have a great skill. Let's say you're in the medical field, you're in the tech field, and we help you turn your skills into a business. Or we take business owners who are coaches and consultants, real estate agents, people who already have a premium business that they can command premium prices for. And we teach them how to take that business and turn it into something even more profitable with social media. The beautiful thing about social media, guys, is you're watching me on a social media platform right now. This video costs me nothing to make. It's going to bring me clients, and those clients, my cost of acquisition is zero, as opposed to ads where you have to pay to get your video out there to then hope to get clients. Yeah. So that's the beautiful thing about organic social media content. And I just want to please, guys, please stop looking at these numbers, as once you start really making some money, you're going to be like, oh, I see what this motherfucker talking about. Fit is not as crazy as I thought. He said 50 grand a month is not that much money. Nah, I see why he's not, because he don't really keep 50. You keep like 10, 20, because if you're smart, you're not keeping the full 50 because you don't want to get taxed 30%. You see what I'm saying?
Most business owners will set up a percentage ratio where when they get any lump sum of cash into their business, the majority, let's say 80% of it, is reinvested back into the business if it's not spent on business expenses and taxes, etc. But to minimize their tax bill, they'll reinvest that money into the business by either upping their marketing costs or buying tangible assets. Maybe you have a clothing line and you buy a car that reaches over, I think it's a 8,000 pound limit, that will allow you to write that G-Wagon, for example, off as a tax expense. And, there's different routes and different ways to go about it, but that's why they do it. That's why they do it, and they'll keep that ratio that way and maybe only take 10% of that lump sum home, which will be their personal spending cash for their own personal expenses, etc. But most smart businessmen, businesswomen, business people will have a ratio where the majority of their profits, their gross profits from their business revenue, will be reinvested back into the business in one form or another.
Tomorrow you make 100 net, you probably made 300 to 400. You don't want a personal income tax of 100 grand a month. You're 1040 as a business owner. You got 100 in your pocket. IRS gonna be having a field day with your ass. They're gonna have a field day. So I'm trying to keep my net profit as low as possible, put that shit right back into my business, live off as little as possible, and keep growing till I get to the point where my enterprise value of my company or my business is so high that I can go borrow against it to get toys. Not when it's at a measly 100 grand a month. Not when it's at $1 million a month. That's nothing. You're not keeping most of that money. So don't let these motherfuckers fool you. Get your money up so you can get closer and closer to freedom, so you can then have the future that you want. But it starts.
Yeah. I agree. This video is longer than normal. My videos are usually 20, 25 minutes. This is going to be about 30 minutes, but I feel like it's necessary. I don't think that he said anything that's incorrect. I don't think he said anything that was false, that was fabricated. The only thing I think was a bit disingenuous is guys try to make $100,000 a month. I do understand his rhetoric. I do understand where he's coming from, but we have to add some context into that. So it's a very small minority of people who will leave the employee side of things and go over to being a business owner. And even then, on the business side of things, it's a very small percentage of business owners who will actually be profitable and successful. So with all that being said, I'm not saying don't shoot for the stars. Don't, like I said, if you shoot for the moon, you might land on the stars. Try your very best to achieve a certain level of financial success, but understand that not everybody's going to get there. It is survival of the fittest. Unfortunately, we live in a capitalistic society where who get it, they get it. Who don't, they don't. It's really that simple. But nothing he said here other than that was false. I agree with everything he said. And I do believe that in the Black community, especially, I'm Latino as well, so even in the Hispanic Latino community, we have to be teaching financial literacy. We really do. If we're ever going to close the financial wealth gap that is in this country due to a 400-year head start, we all know, we know what's up. We have to learn financial literacy to close that gap. It was a good video nonetheless. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And yeah, I'll see you guys on the next one, all right? Peace.